Welcome to Maine Quality. I'm your host, Orion Breen, and with us today is Drew Wyman, Interim Executive Director of the Alzheimer's Association of Maine. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well, thanks.
So what would you like to get the word out about?
I'd like people to know about the association and what we do and what we offer, really.
So what do you do? What do you offer?
Well, we offer programs and support services for families in Maine that have been affected by Alzheimer's or dealing with Alzheimer's. And we also offer a ton of volunteer opportunities on ways to get involved in the community. And one of the biggest things that we offer is a 24/7 helpline that people can call. It's exactly that, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, with any kind of question about Alzheimer's or other dementias.
What are some of the most common questions you get?
Well, one of the most common questions that we get is, what is the difference between Alzheimer's and dementia? People don't know that. They think of it as an interchangeable term. The answer is that Alzheimer's is the most common cause of dementia. So dementia is really a set of symptoms, sort of confusion with time and space. Memory loss is a big piece of that. In some cases, it's, hallucinations, or there's like delirium stuff. But the major cause is Alzheimer's disease, which has hallmark characteristics of amyloid fluid in the brain and tau, plaques and tangles, and brain atrophy. But other causes include like vascular dementia, frontal temporal dementia. There's a whole host of other common causes.
What type of resources are there in Maine for somebody who thinks their parent may be developing Alzheimer's?
A big piece is our website, of course, and where we publish all our resources. But we've just recently moved a whole host of education programs, support groups, that sort of thing, to virtual formats, given the COVID-19 quarantine and physical distancing stuff. So we have, if you go to our homepage, which is alz.org/Maine, there's a list of COVID-19 resources right away, and sort of frequently asked questions. But then below that is a list of all of our virtual programs throughout New England that all people in Maine are welcome to attend. And then by calling our helpline, that it's 800-272-3900, we can connect you with a support group or resources in the area for something that that a family could get connected with. But the education programs are a big thing, and they're geared toward just the general public. Like you or I could go and learn about sort of 10 warning signs of Alzheimer's. You could learn about like legal and financial stuff if you're worried maybe one of your parents was recently diagnosed or they're having memory problems. And then social programs, like what you can do to reduce risk, or what you can do to help someone who's in the early stages to continue to live a really good quality life.
In this time where people are isolated, is that more of a challenge for your organization and for the people that you're helping?
Well, for us as an organization, yeah, definitely for the people that we're helping. I mean, as we know, long-term care facilities are getting hit really hard with this. And it is incredibly difficult for families that are unable to visit loved ones in facilities. So yeah, so support, that's why we offer the support groups, the helpline. I mean, that's the kind of thing, again, like someone could call the helpline to say, geez, I haven't seen my loved one in 3 weeks and they won't let me in the facility because they're on lockdown. And they just need support. They need to vent, or they need to talk it through. Or there's a support group that we could connect them with that would be geared toward people that can't, visit their loved ones, and they're in the same boat, and it's really difficult. So yeah. So for us, we want to be there for the families and give them the support they need.
What is the number the helpline number?
The helpline, yeah, 1-800-272-3900. And that's all over our website too. alz.org is the national website. So alz.org, 800-272-3900. That's what you want to remember. And that will get you, that is the entry point to everything.
So how can people get involved?
Well, we want everyone to help us out. We have these 2 hallmark events, right, that are our full mission events. the biggest one being the Walk to End Alzheimer's. That's what raises the funds to keep all this stuff going. And those take place in the fall. They're in 7 locations throughout Maine. The first one, the Walk to End Alzheimer's, is September 12th, is the first of the 7. And there's 2 simultaneously, one in York Beach and one in Lewiston. So that's Saturday, September 12th at 8 in the morning. And then the Greater Portland Walk to End Alzheimer's in Payson Park is Saturday, September 26th. And there's also one in Fort Kent that day. That's also at 8 a.m. And then October 3rd is the Kennebec Valley Area Walk to End Alzheimer's in Waterville, Maine. And then the last weekend is October 17th, which is the Eastern Maine Walk to End Alzheimer's in Bangor, as well as the Mid-Coast Area Walk to End Alzheimer's in Brunswick. The Walk to End Alzheimer's, get involved in the Walk to End Alzheimer's. It's super easy. You can register a team and raise some money. You could join one of if you're in the area where, actually, because it just doesn't matter now that everything's virtual, you could join a planning committee and help plan the events from the ground up and execute it. And that's a great networking opportunity. It's kind of like a year-long commitment. It's sort of like joining a miniature board. It's really a great experience and a great way to network too. So it's a win-win. And spread the word that way. But join us and raise some funds. And the other event is called the Longest Day, which happens in the month of June, right around the summer solstice. The longest day means the day with the most light. And that is based around like a sort of individual thing, activity based. So my team, for example, we're a 2-person team and we're going to hike a mountain. And that's something that we can do, virtually. And we just raise money by sharing it on social media. Try to raise $500 and sponsor us like a bowl-a-thon type of thing. And that's another great way people can get involved in a very more personal, like individualized way.
How long have you been doing this work?
I started with the association in 2009, and then intermittently I left for a period of time. But even during the time I was gone, I volunteered and I participated in the Walk to End Alzheimer's. So I've been participating in the Walk to End Alzheimer's since 2009. I'm just serving as interim executive director right now. Prior to that, I was director of communications, and I've been doing that since 2016.
How has the science and understanding of Alzheimer's changed since you've gotten involved in?
It's hard because it hasn't been like a drug approved in a long time. But what's great about the association and something that I love is that we are the largest nonprofit funder of Alzheimer's research in the world, right? So next to the United States government and the Chinese government, you have the Alzheimer's Association, this nonprofit that is funding, all kinds of studies. We're funding 540 projects across 30 countries, which you can't do if you're a government agency, right? And it's to the tune of over $185 million in these studies. And so we kind of fill a niche that government funding can't fill. But we also we have an advocacy program. So we push on legislators to sign on to funding at the NIH level, the NIA level, and increase funding for Alzheimer's research on a federal level. But in terms of the actual breakthroughs, there's been stuff. There was a study we funded that helped identify, like it was a PET scan for amyloid fluid, which is a hallmark sign of Alzheimer's. And because of that, you can, it's very expensive and it's not a common thing. But because of that, it enabled all these other studies to take place. So this breakthrough kind of happened when we were able to see amyloid in the human brain of a living person. And then that person could then go on to other clinical trials and other studies. And it just, it just really enabled a exponential development in research. But that's been very exciting.
What's happening in the Bangor, Blue Hill area with local chapters?
So we're the only chapter in Maine. And I mean, right now the staff is working out of our offices, but the office is based in Scarborough, which is closed right now. But we're working out of our homes. And but in Bangor, so we have a Walk to End Alzheimer's happening in Bangor. But coming up, the Bangor Walk to End Alzheimer's Planning Committee is hosting an event. And they're doing this thing, they're planting a public garden in the downtown area in the park between Central and Franklin Streets over the next couple of weeks. And the idea is to raise awareness of the mission of the association and to promote the Eastern Maine Walk to End Alzheimer's, which is happening in October. But people can get involved. They can sign up for a shift and do a planting, as you know, it's sort of conducive to the social distancing. So that's something that's coming out in the coming weeks. And that's, I have a phone number. You can contact Katie at 280-1900. She is leading the charge on that. She's one of our staff members.
What's happening in the Portland area?
Portland area, we're really pushing for people to get involved with The Longest Day. So sign up at alz.org/The Longest Day and do an activity. And the Walk to End Alzheimer's is happening in September. Right now, it is scheduled as a regular event. It would take place in Payson Park and walk around the back cove. And so we want to make sure people get registered for that or join us on the planning committee. And at this point, we're moving forward with the event. We're hoping for about 1,500 people. That would be amazing. But again, it's going to depend on the guidelines of the city and what happens. If a gathering of that size is allowed, we'll have to see. But we're still, regardless of whether the event can happen, we're going to virtually. It's still it's a year-long campaign anyway, and a lot of the fundraising is done virtually via social media or websites or email or that kind of thing. And that's our biggest event in the state of Maine.
How'd you get started in this work?
Well, so I have a family connection to the cause. When I was young, 9 or 10, my grandmother moved in with us because she was exhibiting, memory challenges, and so my family took care of her. So I saw it from a child's perspective, and she moved into a facility when I was 10, I think it was 10. I used to get out of school at early release on Wednesdays, so I'd ride my little BMX bike over to the facility to visit her. And consequently, being an extroverted, sort of friendly kid, I became friends with a whole host of people living with dementia and Alzheimer's disease at this facility. So I was, so it touched me, as a child, and that's something in your imprintable years you have inside you the whole time. So I had these, all kinds of families and friends that had Alzheimer's disease and were dealing with dementia in 1985. And it was before it was even really that recognized or really labeled. We didn't know that much about it. And not a lot of even person-centered care was kind of a new concept. And so that's how I got my heart, how it entered my heart, and how why I do it. But and then I was living in Maine and I was looking for a job, part-time job, and they were hiring an office manager at the local chapter. So I got involved in, and that's when I started back in 2009, I think.
Being young and having these relationships with people that are older than you, people who are, experiencing Alzheimer's, to me, it's so important. The idea of, bringing young people and old people together, seniors, elders, and teenagers and younger people, and not having this kind of age division in society where people don't mix like they used to.
Yeah, and that's a great point, sort of bridging the generation gap, because people are people, right? And you look, I don't know, it's funny, I still feel like I'm kind of the same person I was years ago in some ways. I'm very different in other ways, but I think there's been a big misconception about Alzheimer's disease being an old person's disease, and also being a common, like a typical, like memory loss just happens naturally when you get old. And that is not true. Alzheimer's is not normal aging. 1 in 3 seniors will die with Alzheimer's, but not everyone gets this. And if you can find a treatment or a cure, people don't have to die with this. And it's if you've seen it, it's a hard end. It's a hard gradual decline, and it's a hard end. But I think that it was a big misconception. So I never had that as a kid, because to me, it was a young person's disease. It was affecting me at age 10. And you'll see it with grandchildren. You'll see a lot of people that are active on the Walk to End Alzheimer's committee or doing things, and they're like, I do this for my grandparents. And some people do it for their parents or whatever their connection is. But you see the ones that saw it young, it hits you in a different way, I think.
Why do you live in Maine? What makes Maine special to you?
I like the tax breaks. No. I'm just kidding. I'm from New Hampshire. Um, well, what I love about Maine, you know, not just that it only has one syllable. I mean, I'm into concise writing. I like that, right? But I think that, and also that it doesn't border any other states. That's kind of cool, right? But Maine is an anomaly. It's a little bit weird. It's not pretentious, and it's I don't know. I like the culture in Maine because people. It's a very live and let live kind of environment, and I think that people are very you know, just sort of open to things, and but they're also stoic, which can be, it's great. People are tough and people are stoic and independent, but that can also be frustrating when you're trying to help somebody that, you know, may need help but don't think they do. So, but what I love about Maine is it's got a lot of personality, and of course, I love the ocean and I love the mountains, the coast, you know, the environment. I wouldn't be in a rural state if I didn't love nature. So, and Portland is just, you know, I wouldn't want to be in a smaller city, but it's a great little city.
Who inspires you in Maine and beyond?
That's a tough one. I mean, of course, I love Stephen King, right? And Bob Marley, because they're great. But I don't know if I can call out any one person. I feel like anyone who's doing original stuff and breaking the mold. You know, there's a lot of restaurateurs that are doing cool things. You know, there's cool music stuff happening that I like. There's a lot of people. Maine Council on Aging is a cool organization, and there's leadership there that I really respect. Some good journalism stuff happening in Maine. I just feel like there's a lot of people that don't, you know, they just sort of forge their own path. So, and people like you, really, and MPG. Like I've always been a strong supporter of MPG. I listen to it for the music and for the programming. It's fantastic. I've played on it as a musician, and that's the kind of stuff I love about this area, and the cool coffee shops. Yeah. People, you know, not being like anyone else.
How do you stay grounded and stay hopeful in these challenging times?
I'm really busy with work, of course, and so I think helping other people is a really great feeling because you're not so self-focused if you can help others. And also because I was a musician, it's really great. I have a lot of friends, and we get to stay creative by doing some remote recording and things like that. But yeah, staying social, even though I'm you know, it's virtual, but getting involved in creative projects and reaching out and making sure families have what they need. I'm calling a lot of the volunteers and making sure they're engaged, leading a planning committee. I'm leading the board meetings. We have a lot of great volunteers on our board, and just really trying to stay connected with people, make sure they have what they need and have opportunities to make a difference, you know, take advantage of our volunteer opportunities and get involved.
You play guitar?
I poorly. No, I play the bass. Yeah.
You play the bass.
Right. Right.
How'd you get into?
I dabble on all the other inferior instruments, but I play the bass.
What got you into music and into the bass? And
I don't know, but coincidentally, it was right around puberty. I think, you know, growing up in a small town in New Hampshire, it was exciting to see, you know, rock bands and buy records, and there was a record store in town. And I think seeing like, I don't know, it was just really exciting. But I think the bass, because I'm a person that likes kind of extremes. So like, I drink my coffee black. I like dark chocolate. I like sort of strong spice and flavors, and bass, you don't get any lower than that, right? So it's a very rich and powerful sound. And that's, you know, I have an older brother, and when we were kids, you know, he had a guitar. He had an acoustic guitar, and he was like, "Check it out." And I was like checking it out, and I kept like detuning it. So I put it down to a low D and then a low C, and I was like, "Okay, that's good." And then I do the rest of the strings, and I get it as low as I could without the strings going too floppy. And he's just shaking his head, and then he just was sort of like, "I think you might be a bass player." So I bought a bass. Gave him back his guitar.
what kind of music is your thing?
Well, I hate this thing. It's a tough question, but I hate it when people say I like everything, because that's not true. But it depends, I think. I like playing the upright bass, so I like playing that in like gypsy jazz kind of hot club stuff, like Django Reinhardt stuff,
Cool.
or regular jazz combo stuff, and I love listening to that. I'm not very good at it, but I'm good enough to get by, and I like the tone of it for that. And then with electric bass, I have several of them, and they're all set up differently. So I love the sort of funk and Motown kind of groovy stuff, and funk and soul is just so great to play on the bass, obviously. And then I have the other basses that are more aggressive, and for like the classic rock, blazing distorted guitars and distorted bass, and really lots of overtones and exciting, percussive sounds. So I like it all. I like Americana music too, and classic rock, and groovy stuff.
What do you think of the music scene in Maine and in Portland?
It's interesting, and I'm in it very peripherally. So there's a part of me, where I'm involved in like the sort of working scene, where it's gigging, bar bands, and you're gigging and you're playing cover tunes, or you're playing a certain type of music. And that's a lot of fun doing this summer stuff, and you get tourists, and you have, a changing audience. So you can kind of do the same set. And then for original music, there's some great stuff happening, and there's some great recording studios in town where the engineers are like amazing, and the facilities are really cool. You've got Halo, and you've got Acadia Recording Company. Both are amazing. And then there's other little like things springing up here and there, where people have their own studios in their basements or attics or garages. There's just a lot of talent. There's a rockabilly scene, or a bunch of rockabilly bands. There's a lot of Americana. There's groovy jam bands and stuff. It's exciting. There's something for everyone, and there's a lot. What's really exciting is you have the audience. People are into it. People come out. People like live music, and so when there's a demand, that's a good sign.
How are things in the music scene right now that you've seen? With obviously you're not having live shows like you did in the past. I see people doing virtual concerts on Facebook or Instagram or other places.
There was something, one of the bands I play with did a little thing for Blue, the club on Congress Street, kind of a jazz blues club. And that was cool. We did a little, like a benefit thing. They did a series of that. And I know Big Babe's Tavern in South Portland was going to do a live stream of bands, have some bands in there, which is cool. And that's a great new venue in town. But I haven't done much of that. I've just been doing like remote recording, mostly because I'm so busy with work, with the day job, that, keeping the programs and services for the association going. But there's a lot of stuff out there. It's amazing to see how many people are doing things too, and how many people play. And you're like, oh, geez, here's another one. Who knew?
What are the biggest challenges or opportunities you see in Maine?
Talking about my work with the Alzheimer's Association is the fact that it's the most rural state in the country, and reaching people. And that again, that piece of the culture, the main sort of attitude of stoicism is really difficult to penetrate sometimes when you're like, someone will call and be like, yeah, my spouse has memory loss. And then it turns out that they're like in the late stages of Alzheimer's or dementia, and really dangerous. And you're sort of like, geez, if you had called us, 2 or 3 years ago, you'd be in a better position. So reaching people and also there's some barriers, obviously with rural and the winter weather, people have trouble traveling to programs. And then there's a technological barrier. Some people don't have quality high-speed internet. And how can you attend a webinar or a virtual support group if you don't have access to that? So some learning stuff there, but reaching people, and also there's a big stigma associated with Alzheimer's disease or anything that has cognitive impairment. No one wants to admit their brain isn't working. And so fighting the stigma and overcoming that and being like, geez, this is not your fault. There's nothing to be ashamed of. They're not choosing this behavior, is tough. So educating people, reaching people, and getting people to engage in our activities is, I think, the biggest challenge in it. Consequently, the big opportunity that has resulted from the COVID-19 quarantine is that people are now forced to do virtual things. So no matter what happens next, if we go back to the ways of the past or some sort of hybrid situation, at least people will be like, well, I have Zoom and I have good Wi-Fi now that and now they can take advantage of our programs without having to get in the car at all. And it might be someone in Calais, Maine that can take advantage of a free program that we offer, that we work so hard to put together.
Is there anything we haven't touched upon that you want to say a few words about?
Well, there's just so much. There's so much to learn about Alzheimer's and dementia, and it's constantly changing like anything else. I would just say, it's important to be educated on it. So I think I would just encourage anyone to check out our website, alz.org/Maine, or our Facebook page. And if anyone has any questions, to reach out to us with the helpline or via email, which you can get from the website. So alz.org/Maine or the 800-272-3900. It's toll free, it's confidential, and any question related to Alzheimer's disease, dementia, any other cause of dementia, frontal temporal, vascular dementia, any of that stuff. But educate yourself and also learn about preventative measures. Learn about what's going on. Live a healthy lifestyle. That's all that stuff points to reduce risk. How
do you partner and collaborate and work with other organizations in Maine?
Well, there's so many, there's this whole dementia-friendly Maine initiative, and there's a lot of other community partners that we try to align with. We have a robust advocacy program where if people can, sign up to be a volunteer advocate and serve on a task, there's task force that we offer or collaborate with other organizations. So we share knowledge, that sort of thing. In January, we host a Maine State Alzheimer's Advocacy Day, and so we convene advocates, family members, anyone who wants to share their story. We have the news media come in, we do a press conference, we have presenters. Dr. Naveed Shah spoke at last year. We had a researcher from the Jackson Laboratory give an update on Alzheimer's research that's happening there that the association is also funding. Other community partners that are launching like an early detection initiative pilot plan will be there. We try to convene groups like that and enable the sharing of information. And every year we host the Alzheimer's International Conference. This year it's in Amsterdam, but will be virtual. And it's free this year, and there's no limit to registration, but it's a place for Alzheimer's researchers around the globe to share their findings, present their posters, do presentations. And I think last year there were over 5,300 researchers that attended, and now it's wide open. I mean, you can attend, anyone can attend, and it's a fascinating time. But it's a way to have a clearinghouse where you can enable people to share information so you don't miss any opportunities. There's 3 federal priorities that we're pushing right now, and I wish I could speak to them better than I can. But there's funding for there's an elder abuse task force. There's a piece on that. There's funding for larger nonprofits, like in this COVID-19 situations. There was a bill out there to enable some economic relief for nonprofits that are larger than, I think, 500 employees. So we have I think right now the National Association has around 1,500 employees, but when we're fully staffed, we've ramped up to 2,000. So that's some legislation that's happening right now on the federal front. But we have a page dedicated to our legislative priorities, both federal and state, on the website at alz.org/Maine. And it gets pretty complicated. So it's easy to dive in there and see what's happening.
You're listening to Maine Quality. I'm your host, Orion Breen, and with us today was Drew Wyman, Interim Executive Director of the Alzheimer's Association of Maine. Thank you so much for coming on.
Orion, thanks a million for having me. It's great.